building a company and developing drugs in particular, because this has always been kind of the focus of my companies, there are always surprises. There are always results that are not well anticipated or expected. And then you need to, well, kind of find a solution for the unexpected challenge, because that always, usually if something is unexpected, it represents a challenge. This is one mindset that, I mean, you have to be prepared for the unknown, for the unexpected, and be open to find then the best solution. I think the other mindset that you have to have is that you always seize any kind of opportunity that you find left, right, or center that could provide a solution. So that you are not kind of going only along the, let's say, the path that you might have planned out initially, but that you're always open to listen to advice from others, maybe look at opportunities that you haven't considered before, and to be totally open to think or to act in any kind of direction in a totally opportunistic way in order to find a solution or to kind of find a way around a certain roadblock. Seize an opportunity or take an opportunity if it is there, and not think that this is uncharted territory, nobody has done it. So if there's an opportunity, seize it, grab it, and go forward if it fits to your solution. If I look at NBE-Therapeutics, I've mentioned before that it started out with a specific conjugation technology platform, which supposedly was adequate to generate better, more quality, higher quality antibody-drug conjugates. But that was not sufficient. So we thought very hard, well, what can we do in order to, well, add another aspect in generating effective ADCs? And of course, the mode of action of ADCs is to bring the toxic molecules or payloads or warheads to the cancer cells. So we needed to find a toxin platform. We have done a lot of research, but really couldn't come out with something tangible. So what happened is that at one conference in Boston, I met an old colleague, former colleague from Roche, who meanwhile had moved to the United States and worked in a small startup company developing small molecule drugs and toxins. So almost like, well, you have this image of a drug dealer. He opens his coat and says, look, I have this fantastic new toxin. You have to try that one. I had zero idea about what this toxin is about, what its mode of action was. I had a few basic questions and he said, yeah, I think this fits the bill. And I essentially, without making a big analysis, I basically said, well, send us a few milligrams, we try it out and see how it works. We tested the compound and it was a perfect combination, and probably only in combination with our conjugation platform, because the toxin was ultra toxic. It was ultra potent. Even smallest amounts would be able to kill a patient. So it was absolutely required or absolutely pivotal that the toxin would not get loose or would detach from the antibody in circulation. So in the context of the established conjugation technologies, this toxin would never work. So it was clear that we had this ultra potent and very, let's say, toxic payload or molecule that would perfectly fit to our conjugation platform that provided a very stable and homogeneous ADC. And it turned out that this was the winning combination. We were looking in all kinds of directions in adding to our technology platform, couldn't find anything, kind of using the normal scientific rigor in research. And somebody comes along the corner who says, well, I have something for you. And then, of course, you should not say, well, this is a little bit of a strange situation at a conference. I don't have enough information. You just have to grab the opportunity at this point of time. So that's maybe a little bit of a story and serendipity, how we actually ended up with a completely novel platform that we could not anticipate, simply due, well, to network, again, to people who liked what we do and thought that this could be a good fit. I think I'm just very much of a hopeless optimist. I think in addition to kind of, having this persistence and the mindset that you are always finding a solution for a challenge, I think this is probably what people would describe as an optimist. I think that is certainly something that is very helpful. If you're constantly surrounded by a doom and gloom attitude, I think this is not helpful and also not inspirational for your colleagues and your team members. It's this intrinsic optimism that there will always be a way forward, and we get over this challenge together. And that has always worked out, I have to say, over the years. Let's hope that this will continue going forward, but I'm optimistic that it will be. So if you very quickly give up, if you're not certain if after the first failure everything may be wrong, if you're constantly doubtful, I think this is not a helpful mindset, I guess. But then it comes with this skill of, well, being persistent and not giving up too easily. But then also, I think, applying scientific rigor and not overlooking details, because I think every detail matters at the end of the day if you are doing innovation. If the data tells you you have an issue or a challenge, you rather than work on the challenge, rather than, well, overlooking the details. This, I think, is very important in the long run to become successful in developing, well, meaningful drugs or technologies that work, that you're not negligent in understanding the data as it comes out, and just hoping for the best. So the skill set is scientific understanding, rigor, and not overlooking certain data points. You cannot beat reality or the data. So at the end of the day, it will bite you if you overlook an important detail in whatever result or data where you think, maybe it will not occur another time. Or if you're simply not going into the details, if you're not figuring out that there's a problem. So this can mean millions invested and nothing comes out at the end. So you better solve the problem before the millions are invested. Of course, sometimes you are under extreme pressure, so you have to do certain scouting experiments, but then you also, well, have to recognize and inform stakeholders that this is just a scouting experiment in order to get maybe a certain notion on a direction. But if you want to be successful in the long run, I think you cannot rely on quick and dirty experiments. You have to really be scientifically diligent. You have to apply the utmost scientific rigor and look at the details in order, well, to make the right decisions. Also, even investors say, well, the data tells you where you have to go. I think this is almost common sense, that you cannot ignore the output of data, output of experiments. That gives you the guidance in which direction you can continue to develop your company, your products, your innovation, and in which directions you should better not go. And I think this is very important. And if you don't apply that principle, then I think you are setting yourself up for failure. Nobody wants to be fooled by anyone in the company, and especially not by a CEO or the founders, that everything is fine and all right if it isn't. It's very important that everyone in the team knows exactly what they are up to, what the challenges are, what the company needs to overcome in order to be successful, and not to convey any stories. And as soon as it becomes apparent that something is fishy, and this goes very quick, I think you will lose all credibility. You will lose team members. You will lose their trust. So I think this mutual trust, you can only earn it if you are truthful, if you're transparent and open with your team members. If that one is gone, I think, again, this is a high likelihood for failure, because people will not trust you. They will leave the company. They will look for other alternatives. And if you lose the team and the trust of the team, I would say all is lost.
It was, she claimed, quote, the most important thing humanity has ever built. At its zenith, Theranos was worth nearly $10 billion, and Elizabeth Holmes became the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world. She was also, as the Wall Street Journal uncovered, at the center of a massive multi-year fraud.
The fake it until you make it concept of Elizabeth Holmes, I think this is the quote that she's famous for, or that maybe she hasn't made it herself, but this was kind of a little bit what has been portrayed as one of the features of her company. That is something that should not be pursued. I think it's not only dangerous, certainly it's even to a point that it's illegal if you take money on board, if you're entrusted by investors, for certain things that are based on fake, I think this is where it becomes criminal. So investors are also stakeholders in the company. So they endow you with finances, and this is also hard-earned money from someone. So they want to know, like your team members, firsthand if there's a challenge or if something is not going exactly as advertised. I mean, this is the most awkward situation. If you weren't truthful to your investors, your team members, and you go on and you, cover something up, and then, half a year later, it comes out that everything was fake and covered up. I mean, this is where it's the end of your story, and you will not continue leading your company because you have lost the trust by everyone. So therefore, I think it's not only something that is highly ethical, to be truthful and to be transparent and honest, but it's something that is essential for the future success of a company. I never felt uncomfortable sharing bad news. There was one situation where, I had misinterpreted potentially a data signal or haven't given it enough significance. And, there was one investor who said, you should have seen that. And given my high internal ethical standard, this was the biggest disaster for me, that, I might have overseen a signal in the data. And I was also in a situation where I was under extreme, let's say, stress, not only with the company, but my parents just passed away. I had to organize funerals of my parents and dissolving the household of the family and this kind of things. And then I was apparently not entirely on top of the data readouts that we had that were coming in this period of time. It was uncomfortable that one of the investors had the feeling that I was covering something up, but indeed I didn't realize or recognize it. You have to define realistic objectives. If you start, advertising an idea or a vision that is simply not implementable, I think people will also quickly realize that this is too much, too far-fetched, too far away. And again, this undermines your credibility. I think you have to break things down in manageable, operationally manageable bits and pieces or sub-projects. You have to say, this is the way how operationally and practically I will come from A to B to C to D, and then to finally, the final objective. Because, as I said, in biotech, these are many years of hard work and endeavor. So it needs quite proper planning and planning of reachable milestones and goals in between. And then you can usually convince also the naysayers and the skeptics in a company if you outline a little bit the way how this can be achieved. It has gotten much, much better over the years, but I do occasionally have stage fright when it comes to public presentations, especially if there's a larger crowd. It can occasionally happen, and it depends a little bit also on, let's say, how rested I was or am, how much travel I had before, and also how much or how little preparation I had. You cannot always get all of the punchlines across that you really would like to bring across, because you simply forget about them. I know of some people, especially CEO colleagues, who at least if I listen to them, I have the feeling they don't have zero stage fright. And they can go out and you can wake them up at 3 o'clock at night and they stand up and they give a presentation where there's not a single wrong word in it. So I got used to now performing on stage and performing in front of larger audiences, but I don't always feel entirely comfortable. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, and I don't know what the elements are that go into the one or the other direction. You act and you work and you perform as you are and as you feel comfortable with, which means essentially staying authentic. So if you start playing a role, I think everyone will see through this. So if people tell you, and in my case, this has been the case, that I might have been too soft in a certain situation, I think I achieved the goals at the end anyway, but simply by a different way, rather than going into confrontation mode. I rather like to find a common solution. For me, I think very important is to always be respectful. So then people will be open, to work together with you towards a solution. Negotiations is kind of the art of finding a win-win situation for each party. And I don't think that being tough in negotiations and trying to oppress the other party will be successful in the end. It's rather finding what is the common denominator, what is, figuring out how far you can push a certain position, but then being factual, not being emotional, being respectful, and also considering, the other person's position. And in this situation, I think this is the best way to negotiate and to find common ground and to actually then come to a contract rather than kind of, slamming the fist on the table and basically saying, well, this is how I want it. I don't think that this will lead to any success in negotiations. And then the negotiation is only very often part of a common journey. So if you have destroyed the ground already in terms of not paying respect, you're again setting yourself up for failure. So I think it's makes sense to be respectful and to find out what is the common denominator in order to get the best deal for both parties. We have spoken about this at lunch. I mean, there are some industry leaders who made it very far, where at least in the public, people say, well, that person is lacking all empathy. But maybe that's only an outside picture. I'm a true believer that without being empathic and not having empathy for the other person or party, you will not be successful and you are not able to get any goodwill from anyone if you're just looking for yourself. I think it always has to be a balance. There has to be a win-win. There's always, you always have to think, well, what does the other person expect? What's in it for him or her? So why should they do this? And I think all of this, again, I think is common sense. It's almost like in a relationship. If one oppresses the other, this is an unhealthy relationship. So I think it's basic entrepreneurship to kind of respect the other side, to find common ground, and to do this in a truthful way and in a transparent way, and to play with open cards. Occasionally, you are pursuing plans and you're pursuing an endeavor and a project where there are more skeptics than people who say this could actually work. If everyone basically is convinced that it will not work out, then you might actually take this back to the drawing board and think about it seriously. But there are situations where, people said, well, you're stupid if you do this. But then you have to have the courage and the optimism to say, well, I'm doing it regardless. Well, yeah, there's maybe one skill that I have for which my wife hates me. That is a skill set that is beneficial, and this is to actually perform and to, let's say, generate, let's say, content, ideas, documents, whatever is needed under extreme pressure. I mean, you have 24 hours to go, and you still have actually an unsurmountable amount of work to do. There are people who crush under this pressure, and this is where you said, well, it's the blank sheet. You cannot work creatively. You're totally blocked. This is exactly opposite for me. So the higher the pressure and the higher the challenge, somehow I get more productive. And then I can really perform well and have an extremely high output in terms of, I mean, I can write 5 pages of really serious content in an hour if it's required. But if I have 4 weeks left, then it's less efficient. So no, but in a positive way, I perform best under extreme pressure, and I get very calm. So I never get nervous, and I can work 24 hours without ever sleeping then. That at the same time then also means 2 days later I will totally crash. Yeah, somehow my brain works much more efficiently under these high pressure situations with little time left. That's maybe not something I would advertise. It's better to have a little bit more time to, well, perform the necessary work. But in my case, I mean, this skill, which is a skill, is actually has been very helpful in many cases. This is, of course, was in a situation with NBE-Therapeutics, where we're coming to an exit point. And when it comes to an exit, of course, you have to do due diligence work with the external partner. So they are looking at the whole company in every corner, at every document, at everything that they want to know. And they come with, lists of hundreds of questions, very detailed about everything in the company, processes, technology, patents, IP. So this is an enormous amount of work, and usually that comes on a Friday evening at 6 p.m. And they want to have the answers on Monday morning, 8 a.m. So then you have to very quickly organize yourself. You have to write a lot of content in a short period of time. But all of this has to be, of course, truthful. It has to be referenceable. So you have to have a big output in a short period of time. So I can tell you that the due diligence process that led to the sale of my previous company, NBE-Therapeutics, was one of the most stressful periods, because we always had to deliver and perform under extremely short time frames. And there we really worked sometimes 48 hours or at least 24 hours without any sleep. I mean, when it comes to kind of getting a deal to the finish line, especially if it involves big numbers, then usually there's a lot of work involved. I've equally been impressed by team members, also external consultants, who helped us along the way, who worked almost equally hard. The contract needed to be ready, and all of the appendices and all of the data and everything had to be done. Otherwise, the deal could have been blown off. So that was super stressful. This is one concrete example where I think it was very helpful to have this skill to kind of really calm down, do everything that is possible in an extremely short time frame.